Good afternoon. I'm Fe, Head of Digital Marketing of Workbank, your job site with Malasakit. Thanks for joining us for today's Workbank ThinkTank. Please say hello to my co-host, Workbank's Head of Admin, Jack Canlas.
Hi, Fe, and good afternoon to our viewers. Thank you so much for supporting Workbank. For those who don't know us yet, Workbank is the only job site that lets you job hunt with benefits. We offer free training so you can learn skills that will give you an edge over your peers. While you apply, we provide support like grab ride discounts for your job interviews. Workbank users also get the Workbank e-card, a first in the jobs market, which entitles you to lifestyle perks like food and fitness freebies with partner merchants. You know, job hunting can be fun and rewarding. But I'll stop right here. I'll just let you see it for yourself. Please watch this.
Only Workbank can give you job hunting with benefits. So sign up today at workbank.com. For now, let's get on with the program. Our topic today is very timely. Jack, did you know that the World Health Organization reported just this April that there was a five-fold increase in cyber attacks?
Yes, Faye, I saw that. And this is an issue that's very close to our hearts and certainly a top priority for Workbank because we have over 100,000 users whose data we have to keep secure. But unfortunately, cybersecurity is a topic that is not familiar to all. Not a lot of people can recognize cyber threats. And most people don't know how to contain the damage when it hits. This topic is so crucial for us to know because the pandemic has gotten us to go online more than ever. Most of us work from home, and there's no guarantee that our home internet connections are secured and free from threats.
That's right. That's why we invited an IT security expert today to give us pointers on how to recognize cyber attacks and how to minimize their damage. He's the Chief Operating Officer of Red Rock IT Security, a local company that boasts of some of the most talented IT security specialists in the country. Please say hello to Paul Prantilla. He's also a personal friend of mine. Hi, Paul.
Hi, Paul.
Hi, Jack. Hi, Faye. So yeah, I just want to make sure if everyone can see my screen, the title side.
Yes, we can see your screen.
All right. So shall we go ahead?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So right. A lot of news has been going on about phishing attacks. Like some people don't even know what phishing is. And to some, when they hear phishing, akala nila literal na nangingisda. It's kind of funny, but sad and scary also. People are mas vulnerable ang mga tao ngayon to cybersecurity attacks since a lot of us are working from home na. So we'll be turning you over, Paul, but for us to have a better understanding on all of this. But before all of those, we'd like to remind everyone who's tuned in right now that Paul is open to questions after the presentation. So please type away your questions in the comment section. Paul, you can take it away now.
All right. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm glad it stopped raining. So I'm going to start off by talking about personal and private IT security that can be done practically by everyday people who are working from home during the ECQ. So before that, just a bit of a background on the company I represent and who I am. So we're Red Rock Security. Basically, we're a group of Filipinos with individually, we have over 15 years of experience in finance, telecom, software, government, and the academe. We're consisting of MS and PhD graduates. We're teachers as well, or former teachers from UP Los Baños and UP Diliman. We're also certified trainers for the world's most advanced penetration testing platform. So basically, that's the software, that's a platform used when conducting, shall we say, ethical hacking tests. So there are only 2 certified trainers for that in Asia Pacific, and they're both in Red Rock Security. One is myself, and the other is actually the brother of Faith, who's presenting right now. Also, the only Filipinos to have consistently placed in the finals and actually win in DEF CON, the world's biggest hacking conference, are associated with Red Rock Security as well. So basically, we're a security services company who emphasize on skills of the individual in providing IT security services for local companies. So with that out of the way, I just want to stress that it's really in our advocacy that we talk about IT security to the general public, because for us, improving IT security is not just a corporate thing. It's something that everyone should do, no matter where they are in the industry. And we want to best focus on the organizations here and the people here in the Philippines because we're all Filipinos. So that said, I want to introduce to everyone the threats that we constantly face in the cyber world. So you'll get a lot of news saying this large company has been breached, this large company has been hacked, thousands of users, emails and paths have been released. Now, one thing that may not be obvious is that these are companies who spend millions of dollars annually for security. It's not a joke. This is a huge budget, and yet these things still keep on happening. Now, why? One reason contributing towards that is because it really just takes one click sometimes for an organization to quote unquote get hacked. Just no matter how much an organization spends, sometimes it just takes sometimes one click of a URL, one click of an email link, one opening of a malicious file for the entire organization to practically get hacked. So, and that's not, well, you could see why it's not unimaginable, because these screenshots show real examples of actual malware or actual malicious software that are sent to users who don't know better than to not click it. So things like svchost.exe or malicious programs that simply look like a text file. You have browser advertisements or browser pop-ups that try to make it look like it's from official tech support. And you actually have PDF files where if you open the PDF file, it actually tries to do something malicious. And so out of thousands of employees, possibly in a large organization, just clicking this allow button, for instance, can allow a serious backdoor from an attacker to within a company. Now, I'll be explaining why that is and how that works. But I just want the takeaway for these slides to be all about we're constantly vulnerable and there are constantly threats out there. Now, this has increased even more because of the ECQ. Now, I mentioned about emails, all right? One thing that gets people to click on emails, if it looks like it's coming from a legitimate source. So if there's an email talking about COVID-19 and it sounds like it's coming from the domain name who-covid19.com, I bet you that there will be more than usual number of people who'll be willing to click on any link in that email. So hackers or malicious threat actors realize that. So starting even January, as early as January and a spike in February, attackers, they've been preparing for this. They've been registering domains such as COVID-19-WHO, COVID-19cure.com. They register that so they'll be able to send email coming from that with the disguise of looking legitimate. So that has increased the threat landscape even further. Now, we have some stats for that as to what happened after March. So basically, this comes from the website Security Affairs. There has been a 667% increase of attacks there has been a quadrupling of cybercrime reports from the FBI. 2% of all daily spam are COVID-19. Now, that may seem small, but it's actually huge, considering that's 2% of all mild spam in the entire world. So, and up to this day, thousands of scam sites are being created just to get that one single user in that organization to click on an email link. Now, for those of you who are not that familiar why that could be so dangerous, I'll be talking about that and also how to mitigate against that threat. Now, but just for a graphic here, you have several phishing emails, and these are what they look like. 54% are scams. So probably an email saying that, oh, injecting yourself with detergent will cure you of COVID-19. You have impersonating attacks, blackmail, enterprise email compromise. The point being, it's all out there, and you probably received probably one or two of these. All right, so now that's all. Now, since everyone is working at home, so are the attackers. They're working from home. They have more time. There have been recent attacks locally. This is probably the most public one that I could share, the recent Sanbeda hack, where there were a lot of email and password accounts that were released and put into github.io. So let's talk about how does this happen? How does one hack, quote unquote, so easily? So this is really the main underlying reason. IT security is just not taught in schools. If you think about it, IT security should be as basic nowadays as physical security. We should be taught not to receive candy from strangers. We should teach children not to really go to dark alleyways or places where they feel that are unsafe. That, we believe, should be the case for IT security as well. There has to be a venue for this to be taught. We're on the internet almost all the time. Instead, students in schools, they're taught to create software as quick as possible. So this has an effect. So even IT professionals, they're not fully aware how easy it is to be hacked. IT professionals, they're trained to create this within this deadline. Now, that has a repercussion, which I'll get into lately. What happened there is they're not aware how easy it is to be hacked. So even IT professionals are easily hacked. Now, if IT professionals can be hacked, how much more for other non-technical people, our lolos, our lolas, the firemen, the judges, all right? So the answer to that is very likely. People, or at least their accounts, they're very likely to be compromised in one way or another. I would be willing to bet that maybe at least 95% of everyone watching this has an account that has been compromised, not necessarily by their fault or by a gap that they did, but sometimes it's just beyond our control. So we have to accept that. So I'd like us to open this website just to demonstrate. If you guys can open this website, I'll be, maybe let's have 2 minutes for this. HaveIBeenPwned.com, where there's no A in pawn. So if you open this website right now, so go ahead, put your mail email address in there, your Gmail email address, and then it's gonna tell you if that has been breached at least once. Now, I'm willing to bet everyone the answer would be yes, it has been breached at least once. Why? Because no matter what organization stores your email and password, they're still organizations, they're still hackable. And once they are hackable, like the Sanbeda organization a while ago, hackers would get all of those accounts, all of those passwords, and share it to other people. The biggest problem there, which I'll demonstrate further, is that illustrates why we should not use the same passwords for multiple sites. Now, if it shows here, so you're probably already opening this right now, you probably see that, oh crap, my Gmail account that I use here has been compromised. So what that means is they probably know the password to that. So what attackers will try to do is they'll try to reuse that password and your email address to Facebook, to LinkedIn, to CNN.com, to whatever. They'll try to reuse what other service have you used in the internet that uses the same password here. All right. So, okay. So again, this talk is basically not how to prevent really, well, that's part of it. It's not only about preventing being hacked, but really, and equally important, to really manage the inevitable. Even in the IT security field right now, people don't say anymore, never be hacked. They don't, because they know that that's impossible. It's more like, what we have to be prepared when that happens. We have to know what to do. And also we have to figure out what are the best ways to prevent that in the first place. All right, so just something a bit leaning towards technical, but I want everyone to have an idea what exactly happens when we say hack. This account has been hacked. This website has been hacked. What actually happens? Now, we have to go back to this basic formula. We have threats. So these are malicious things, right? Threats, when they have to be combined to a vulnerability. A vulnerability can be software, in this case, that has a problem with it. It was not coded well. There's a mistake, or there's a way in how it was created, this ware, that can be exploited by a threat. I'll discuss that a bit more later. So when you combine a threat and a vulnerability, that gives rise to risk. So again, threats, that's the danger. Vulnerability, that's the weakness that the danger takes advantage of. And risk is what happens when you combine both together. So in an actual hack, it may look something like this. First, you need a weakness, right? You need a vulnerability. So let's say you have a computer running a program that has a problem with it. Now, one good example for that is in our Windows computer. By default, we're running a service called file sharing services. Now, around 2 years ago, it was discovered that it had a problem with it, a vulnerability, this Windows file sharing service, meaning it had a weakness. Now, people, researchers discovered that I can create a threat that can take advantage of that weakness. So that threat, we call it an exploit, all right? It was even given a name, Eternal Blue. Eternal Blue was the name of a piece of code called the exploit that, given a target, a specific weakness, it will make that service or that program with that weakness do anything the attacker wants it to do. So let me rephrase that. You have a software. Software, they can have problems. And those problems are called vulnerabilities. Exploits are specifically programmed to take advantage of those vulnerabilities. Now, when you take advantage of it, you want that computer to behave in a way it was never designed to do. In short, I will use Eternal Blue to make the Windows file sharing service do something it was never supposed to do. Now, what we wanted to do is called the payload. Now, in this case, the payload was also a very famous payload. It was called WannaCry. So probably some people have heard of this. The words Eternal Blue and WannaCry. You combine an exploit with a payload, you shove it into the Wiz file sharing service, you send it over to it, and then now you're making the computer do whatever you want it to do. In this case, activate WannaCry. Now, what does WannaCry do? When you exploit the file sharing service, it decrypts your entire computer. It decrypts your entire computer, and when you open your computer, it will show you this message. Oh, all your files have been encrypted. For us, we'll tell you how to decrypt your computer, but you have to pay us in Bitcoin. So basically, that's the anatomy of a hack. There is a weakness somewhere. So I want everyone to remember that. you require a weakness in a program, take note, everything in the IT world is almost a program, all right? Everything we're using right now, the browser using to open Facebook and show this stream, that's a program. Zoom is a program. Okay, now that said, we're probably going to ask ourselves, all right, how does this happen in everyday life? Not everyone has a computer running Windows file sharing services in the internet. So we're probably asking ourselves right now, how does the average user working from home during ECQ get hacked? Okay, so these are a few examples. So one is malicious links. So this comes through email. The email will try to look like something that's familiar and something that's official. So Netflix, someone will try to look like their Netflix. They'll send you this email, your account has been suspended. Now, if you notice here, there's a login to your account. They're trying to get you to click a link. So you may be asking, what happened when I click it? What can go wrong if I click a link? Another example. So this was sent to an IT security company called SANS. All right. So this email had a link to an attachment saying, oh, this is the curriculum for 2015. Now, if you hover your mouse to it, it's going to show you a link, bit.ly.com. Now, these are actual emails. These are actual malicious emails. These links are actual malicious links. What happens is that when you click on these, it opens a website that tries to exploit a weakness in your web browser. That's what it's trying to do. So that's the whole point of malicious links. People don't always update their web browser. So when web browsers have security vulnerabilities, attackers have the idea that, okay, if I make this user go to this website, and this website has an exploit that will trigger if this person accesses this website. All I have to do, I being the attacker, all I have to do is to really get this person to click on that email. So that's one example of phishing, because it's like you're trying to fish among a sea of 1,000 users. You send this Netflix email, quote unquote, fake Netflix email. It's like you're fishing in the ocean. Not everyone is probably going to click this, but if one person out of 1,000 people in that organization clicks this, I already have full control over this guy's computer. And then I can move around the company's network. So that's an example of malicious links. Another one is a malicious PDF. So again, this is sometimes sent through email. This can also be downloaded by websites, but the concept is the same. In this case, the malicious software that attackers are trying to exploit is your PDF reader. Your PDF reader has vulnerabilities, or it could have vulnerabilities. So what the attacker is trying to get done is for you, with that PDF reader, with a vulnerability on it, to download this PDF file. That's actually not a PDF file. It's not, well, at least it's not a normal PDF file, but it's a PDF file explicitly designed to make your computer do something, or your PDF reader to do something it was never intended to do. And usually the end result is the attacker now has full control over your computer. All right, so sometimes so these are not really that odd. PDF files, Word documents as well, Excel files as well. It's not really obvious how they can be malicious, but if these have macros enabled, that allows the program, the Word doc, the Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel, it allows these to have much more power over the computer, over what the computer can do than it would normally have. So opening a document specifically designed to do malicious things like take over your computer, that's what these malicious Word documents try to do. So again, it's really hard, and it really needs some focus to really be careful every day in our busy everyday lives, in our work, where we receive an email looking like it's coming from your boss. And the email of your boss says, please open this. I need this immediately. I'm in a phone call. Can you give me this? If you receive an email like that, and that has a PDF file, what are you going to do? You're probably going to open it. That's the real problem we face. So now, couple of tips to avoid these things. So beware of any email or communications that are coming from CDC or WHO, because these are a lot nowadays. So they really try to make themselves look legit. Remember, their goal is to get you to click on something, to download and open something. That's the common factor out of all of those. So you may want to turn off automatic hyperlinking in your email software so that you can avoid clicking those URLs. Now, if it looks like the email has language saying, I need this right away, I need this in 10 minutes, there's wrong spelling, that should trigger some warning signs. A lot of high profile hacks have happened this way. Like an email that looks like it's coming from someone very, very important, and it's sent to a help desk guy saying, this is the CEO. I need to change my password into this. I can't access. I'm in another country right now. So more than likely, the tech support guy in the night shift, really tired, will just follow and comply. Now, avoid open attachments, but generally, if it's really something about COVID-19, treat it with extra caution. I showed you the statistics earlier in the presentation showing how much attackers have prepared for this. They really wanted to take advantage of the pandemic situation so that they could get people like you to click on a bad link in an email. Now, this goes without saying, it's really best to disable macros in Microsoft Office. The thing is, it's still used by a lot of people, don't actually really require it. So this is more like a policy thing for companies. Now, one other thing to talk about is people can take advantage of hacked passwords. For example, like that Sanbeda thing, right? If it's in the public, they'll take advantage of that. That was just one example locally, right? The Sanbeda thing. But there are collections all over the internet showing billions or millions of hacked email addresses and passwords. So you have one from, so one big one came from 2019. A really old one was in 2012. But I just wanted to emphasize how really no company is spared in this. Okay, you have Dropbox. They had millions of records exposed as well. You have exploit.ln. This was in late 2016. Now, there are a lot of later things, because this always happens. Now, if your password is in one of these, and your password is used with an email address that you use to register online services. Now, if that password you use is the same for all your services, there's nothing to stop an attacker from trying that out and reusing your password. So that's really why we should not use the same password from multiple sites. It only should be one. So at least if an attacker finds out your password and email for that service, it's only, the damage is limited there. Now I'm going to talk later about answering your question undoubtedly on my mind right now. How do I keep track of 30 different passwords? All of them are 24 characters. They're unreadable. They have numbers and symbols. I'm going to answer that in a bit. One thing to get up there is, now people use that dump passwords as fuel for what we call scareware. So, right, it's essentially public information, right? Searching if there's a hack, if Paul Prantilla's email address has ever been hacked before. What was his password that he used? Let me see. Oh, I know Paul Prantilla's password. in this service that was hacked. Now I'm gonna email Paul Prantilla saying, oh, I know your password. It's this, right? You may not know me, but you're probably wondering why you're getting this email. So the attacker is gonna scare the person. Oh, I actually know your password because I hacked into your computer. I know everything that you're doing. And then that guy will proceed to blackmail. But now, for people who don't know about haveibeenpawned.com, or people who don't know that these are actually public information from public dumps, they're gonna get scared. They're gonna say, oh my God, this guy has hacked into my computer. He knows everything. I have to pay this guy. So this is still being used as a tactic right now to blackmail. So now I have 15 more minutes, I think 10 minutes. I'm gonna talk about how to protect ourselves. So let's start with the basics. Always update software. Now, why? You've probably heard this a lot, but I hope it's a bit clear why we have to do this. Because as you recall, I mentioned that all hacks, they're based on the premise that software has a problem with it. Software has a problem with it that's taken advantage of exploits. And those exploits try to make that software do something it was never intended to do. So you have to update that software. So that's why updating software is always so important. And that goes for your mobile devices as well. In fact, probably even more important for your mobile devices, because in this day and age, there's no device other than our mobile phones that contains so much personal data, so much confidential data in such a dense place in one single device. So it's absolutely critical that we must update the software of that device. Now, this is where I want to say we really, really recommend do not jailbreak your device. You're practically defeating the purpose of why you have all that sensitive information in that device, because you trust, at least Apple, you trust Apple that they're trying to update the software as necessary. They're trying to control what can be placed in your phone or not. Once you jailbreak your device, it's basically the wild, wild west. It's really hard to validate what you're installing in your rooted phone is actual legit software. There's no way, it's really, really hard to tell. So antivirus, that's a basic thing. Always update the antivirus software. Always update the firewalls in your desktop computer. Now, this is where I want to spend a bit of time on. Only install signed software. So what does signed software mean? Now, there is math behind that, but that's basically another talk that I give, how cryptography works, how signed code works. But for the purpose of this discussion, you probably have seen these windows where the operating system is asking you permission if it is allowed to install a certain program. Now, if you look here at the right, you want to see this, the word publisher or verified, or verified publisher. Here, it's essentially saying that Microsoft, we are certain that Microsoft was the one who made this software. Do you want to install this? So that's what you want to see. You want to see proof, or you want to have some confidence that this program that you're trying to install is not malware. It's not a backdoor. It's not a threatening program, by validating that it's from a well-known corporation, as opposed to the one on the left where it says unknown. That's what you don't want to install. So it may take several appearances. Sometimes there has a publisher, but you still want to do some research to just validate who that publisher really is. Okay, here we have an example from Apple. Now, there. So basically, these are the things that you'd like to see. This changes according to different operating systems, but you want the publisher of that software to be verified. All right. Okay. Now, protecting our browser activity. So now the reason why people try to get you to click on links is because attackers know that almost everyone uses a browser. So the browser has become one of the most, uh, it's one of the topics that has the most focus on when attacking and defending. So you really want to control what your browser can do. Now, recall email, right? When you receive an email, here are some tips to make sure that it's not trying to get your browser to open and go to a link. Try to find out if it's talking about something too good to be true. You want to hover your mouse over that link. So if you take a look at the lower left part of the screen, the mouse cursor is on top of Get Started. And then on the bottom left, you'll see the link where it's coming from. So a good thing to do here is compare where that link is trying to take you. It says here carybaptist.org, right? Compare that with who sent the email. It seems like it's coming from irsm.com. So those are the warning signs you want to have a look at. Okay. Now, sometimes you will get this pop-up screen. This is like your last barrier. If your browser thinks that it's not a good idea to visit a link that any other computer program in your computer is trying to open, this is probably the last line of defense you'll see. So, okay. Another thing is everyone has to recognize and understand what an SSL certificate actually is. Now, most people understand that SSL certificates or HTTPS, it encrypts the connection, right? Now, but one thing that people don't realize that it's just half of the of what makes SSL work, the encryption part. There's one more very important thing about SSL that we should know, and it's the second part, the second bullet you see on your right. It tells us who that server really is. I mean, or better said, it helps us validate if this server is really who it's claiming to be. So for example, this URL, https paypal.com. If it was the real paypal.com, that's probably gonna have a lock icon in it. And it's probably gonna have a green highlight to it. Here, it doesn't have that. It just says https paypal.com. And what's more, going to that is gonna show you this message. There seems to be a problem with this guy's website certificate. It does not seem to match. So people would be tempted to click on that, continue to this website, not recommended, even if it says exactly just that. Don't continue to this website. But that's actually what's trying to happen. When you see this, there's a good chance that someone is intercepting your connection to the real paypal.com and is showing you this. They're trying to pretend to be the real paypal.com. And the only thing that's letting you recognize that that's not the real paypal.com is if there's a problem with the SSL certificate. All right. Now, the good news is that you don't have to memorize that, what I just said, the lock icon, although that's useful, the green bar. All you just have to know is if you see this, don't click continue to this website. All right. That's going to go a long way. Now, for those of you who are a bit more savvy and a bit more advanced, this is something everyone in our company uses. We try to mitigate what the browser can do. We reduce the power of a computer browser. If you think these days, browsers these days are crazy. They could stream, they could do gaming, they do Chromecast, they could work directly with your computer. That's a dream for attackers who are trying to attack your browser. They want to take advantage of that power. So another thing to mitigate the problem is to disable browser scripts. So there are extensions for browsers that let you do that. For Firefox, you have no script. For Chrome, you have script save. This is what I personally use. For Safari, you have JS blocker. So I'm not going to talk about these in detail right now, but these are something that you might want to look in your free time. For Windows, you have these zone security levels. I haven't used Windows in a long, long time, but I think this is still applicable for those who have this option. Now, as part, I think I have, let's say, a few more minutes. Okay, how to protect accounts and passwords. And I want to address that question you've been probably been asking yourselves a while back. How do I make 40 or 50 separate passwords for every single service I log into in the internet and keep them all complicated? All right, so just a bit of background. What do we mean by two-factor authentication? Well, the authentication factors are something you know. So this is your username and password. That's one authentication factor, something you know. Another authentication factor is something you have. It should be something that only you in the world can have. Just like your username and password, it should be something that only you in the world would know. Something you have is something only you in the world has. And the last were actually four main ones, but we usually talk of three. The third is something you physically are, your fingerprint and your iris. So these are authenticating factors. The theory is one is not enough. In short, just using a password is not enough. You need multiple, and usually it's two. Two is sufficient. And that is usually something you know and something you have. So how does that work? So if I log into Google with something I know, which is my password, I combine it with something I have. Now, the nice thing is most of us have our own phones nowadays, right? And the phone consists of a unique MSISDN and a unique IMEI. That's probably enough, well, that is theoretically enough to ensure that in the entire world, it's only your phone with the unique MSISDN and unique IMEI. So all we have to do when we authenticate to, let's say, Gmail, is we have to combine our password, something we know, and proof that this phone is something I'm holding in my hand right now. So how do I prove that to Google or any service in the internet that I'm holding that phone with me right now? So one is that service, let's say Gmail, will send a text message to your phone. And Gmail will say, give me the verification password, the one-time password that I just sent to your phone. Prove to me that you have that phone. All right? So that's one way to prove that I have that phone in my hand right now. The other, and this is what I personally use, Google Authenticator. So there are programs that talk to services, Facebook, Google, LinkedIn. One such program is Google Authenticator. Okay, this does not just work with Google. There are different authenticator programs. It uses an open protocol. And all that does is it talks, it tries to generate a passcode that can be used to prove that you have that number. Now, the advantage of something like Google Authenticator over SMS is that this one, the SMS, that won't work if you don't have a signal, right? This one works if you still have, this one still works if you don't have a signal. Okay, it's because it's not constantly talking with the service. These numbers change every minute and they're synchronized with the service you're trying to authenticate to. So they know that in this minute, this is appearing in your phone, 515462, and the next minute it's gonna change, and they're all synchronized. Okay, so okay, all right. So now one thing I want to introduce is LastPass. LastPass is a program that manages passwords for each of your online accounts. So it can generate a password. So if you look at this center right here, generate a password, you could specify a password length. You could make it 24 characters, all consisting of uppercase, lowercase, numbers, and symbols. It's gonna generate that password and you can use that password for a service. So, and it keeps track of the passwords, those unique passwords for each service. And LastPass itself requires a master password and use two-factor authentication. Okay, so I'm running out of time, but that's something I'd advise everyone to use because that solves the problem of having multiple unique passwords for every service you log into, but you don't have to remember them. LastPass will be the one that remembers them. All you have to remember in LastPass is your master password. So personally, I use LastPass in my phone. Now, I have a master password for it. It's really, really long. It's and here to open it, it combines with using my Face ID. So that's what, three-factor authentication, because to even open LastPass, I need a password, maybe even Face ID, and I need OTP for it. So that's how protected the LastPass account is. And when you open the LastPass account, that's going to show you the passwords for every one of your services. So let's say I want to log into Google. Okay. So what that's going to do is open Google in LastPass, or I get the password from Google. I put it into Google. This is automated if it's integrated to your browser. And then Google is going to ask me for the OTP. So all of that just to log in securely into Google. So basically, I put my second OTP into Google, get the OTP from my authenticator, and that's it. So basically, that completes the end-to-end picture. All right. So yeah, I would have wanted to spend a bit more time on the LastPass part, but yeah, I think I came in late. So yeah, so that's it for my presentation. I hope that was useful. So again, we're Red Rock Security. We do a lot of security services here. Usually when an organization in the Philippines is in the news that it has been hacked, you probably won't have heard about Red Rock Security, but we're called in the background to help out, to defend against hacks in real time, to determine weaknesses of companies. So if ever you guys have a requirement, we're here. All right, and we're just right here in Metro Manila, in an underground dark warehouse somewhere. No, just kidding. Anyway, back to you.
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, thank you so much. Those are very helpful tips. The best 3 tips I got are actually using Have I Been Phoned to check if my personal email has been compromised. Actually, I did that a while ago while you were talking, and it's interesting what you can learn from there. And then number 2 was using, as in, no comment na lang kung ano yung nakita ko doon. And
okay.
And then number 2 is using specific extensions for your browsers to keep those secured. So I'll definitely install ScriptSafe later for Chrome. Thank you for that. And then yung third is natuwa ako din sa combining LastPass, Password Manager, and OTP. So I'll definitely start using LastPass after nito. Salamat. Jack, what about you?
Well, totoo Fe, I also checked on the link that Paul gave, and I saw something that I will also share. But yeah, you're right. Ako naman, I learned that it's not enough that you have a strong password, especially during this time. We should also put extra layer of security, like the multi-factor authentication, yung mga OTP na yan, just like what Paul have mentioned. You know what? I'm actually guilty of, recycling passwords from the past, Before, my passwords are easy to know passwords, like yung may mga 1, 2, 3, and my birthdays and all. But after educating myself of cybersecurity, I became aware of these threats and yung serious effects that it can lead us to. So now I'm very conscious and very careful with my actions. I'm glad that I'm somehow ahead of the cybersecurity. That's why now I really scrutinize my emails and I never click any malicious links. Anyway, matanong ko lang, Paul, no? Because I'm also curious. Since you've been in the cybersecurity business for quite a while, what's the worst case that you've ever dealt with in the past? If it's okay for you to share, or maybe cite an example for us. I'm sure
well,
you're curious about it.
Okay. All right. I'm trying to. Okay. I'll try to make this as generic as possible, but probably the worst is being called by a very big organization that probably everyone knows about. The premise is that they have been hacked last month, but when we come in, it turns out they were not hacked last month. They were hacked since a year ago, and not just by one hacker, by multiple hackers. And they're all having a party inside this really big organization, thousands of branches, and no one had any idea because no one was really looking and monitoring. So all of that you had to clean up, and while cleaning up, you have to defend people from attackers from coming back in again. So now, of course, I can't even name the industry, I guess, because that would kind of give it away. But yeah, but a lot of and the scary part is a lot of these things happen that aren't in the news, right? These happen, like, for example, the, the incident I just told you about, I think this was 2 years ago. But for example, when the ECQ started in March, we were working on 4 such incidents at the same time, our company. And these were not just small companies, these were big companies that were quite well known. So the bottom line is, this happens to everyone. We just have to be prepared for it. Yeah, that's it.
Oh, that's scary, huh? That's really, really scary. But and we're glad that someone like you and your company is there, right, to protect these companies. And anyway, so let's proceed. I think we have some questions from our viewers. So let me ask the first question. Okay, here you go. First question from Yvonne Watson. How did Mr. Paul start his career with cybersecurity? In cybersecurity, someone is interested in your career. Okay.
Okay. Well, I'm old. Okay. I graduated from, well, I took my master's in UP Los Baños. I was the first IT director in UP Los Baños. And at that time, my interest was basically on system administration. And then it moved to network administration. And then I joined with several colleagues who had the like mind. And we noticed that no one was really talking about security. It was always programming. But for us, the excitement was security, because you have to understand what's really happening in the network, in the computer. So when that became our focus, since that was really, really niche, we would be the ones who would be called to work on the security architecture for government projects. We were the head security architects for the largest government IT project, which is iGov. And then we work in telco projects as the security for platforms that are used by all Filipinos throughout the country. So the bottom line is, it's something we started early because we were the only ones into it. We had a lot of opportunities that probably would not be too common today, because there are a lot more security experts today. There's still not a lot. We still need more. But yeah, basically that's it.
Okay. Thanks for sharing that, Paul. So another question is actually from Romer. So he said, after checking haveibeenpawned.com, I think maraming nag-check after mo sabihin na yun. So, and seeing at least one breach, what should be the next step?
You have to change make sure that check all your accounts, change the passwords for all your accounts. Try to utilize LastPass. There are several more, but try to read more on how to use these password managers, because that's your biggest protection. Always assume that your account will be hacked. Now, once you assume that your account will be hacked, then you will realize that, okay, my password that I use for that account should not be used anywhere else. So that's the first thing I would recommend. Change everything, make sure that they're all unique, and put OTP.
Thanks, Paul.
Okay. Yeah, I would agree. Okay, next question from Mr. Kahilig, or the Kahilig. I hope I pronounced your name right. What's your opinion about anonymous hacking PLDT's Twitter account?
Uh,
Very
well,
hot topic.
um, uh, well, I'm coming from a purely technology point of view. I don't want to get into politics or things like that. Uh, all I can say is that um, hacking, that's something done by not just people who are after money. It's also being done by people who are activists and want to make a statement. It's just all I can say is just that everyone has a responsibility to defend what they have properly, and that's just the way the world works now.
Thanks.
Safe answer, no? But I'm not sure what else.
Yeah, but we have actually a couple more questions, and they're really good questions. But we only have 4 minutes left. I was wondering if you can take a few more.
Okay, sure.
Okay, great. So yeah. So one question is how would you know if a web this is from Irvin Manipol. So how would you know if a website is legit?
Okay, that's a good question. Several ways. Wow, there are a lot of ways to do that, but one quick way is to look at maybe virustotal.com. So virustotal.com, that's a website that quickly checks it aggregates checks to see if a file hash is legit, if a URL is legit. So I would suggest that a quick way to do it. There are other ways, more advanced ways, like checking how young is the website. Because if you're being asked to open an email that comes from WHO, let's say WHO something, and it turns out that the domain of WHO something was created 2 days ago, I mean that's probably not legit. So there are techniques like that, but I won't go into those details. For now, just try virustotal.com. You could also see if it's in one of the top 1 million domains of Alexa or Alexis. Sorry, mind blank there. But yeah, yeah, that's one way to go about it.
Okay. All right. So, couple of more questions. Okay. So this one's a good question because this is actually my personal question. Then, no. Christian Rodriguez from Christian Rodriguez. Because of the pandemic, a lot of people resulted to buying from online app stores like Shopee and Lazada. How secured are their online payment systems from fraud and other risks? Yan. I want to know really.
Okay. Okay, one of the okay, I don't intend this to be a plug,
Again,
right?
sorry.
Okay, I don't intend this to be a plug, but one of the things we do as a company is we're hired by companies to actually check if their payment systems are okay. Now, I can tell you from experience, we usually encounter a lot of, shall we say, things that have to be fixed. so, um, so it's really hard to say that I'm safe. I'm 100% safe. All right. Um, one good way one good thing to check that always works is to really always check what I described a while ago, the SSL certificate, because that's the one that says that this is really Shopee, this is really Lazada. At least that's one problem out of the way. The other problem after that is, okay, what is happening inside the application once I do my transaction? Now, unfortunately, that's a bit harder to answer unless you're actually working with that company to for the code. But at least for the end user customer right now, check the SSL certificates. Uh, check what are the links it's taking you to. All right, make sure that any page that requires you to put information, make sure it is encrypted and it has a valid SSL certificate. So those basic checks can get you a long way.
Thank you, Paul. Since we're running out of time, we'll limit it to 3 more questions. So the One of the three is from Mr. Ulysses Alan Cardema. So, Mr. Paul, can you recommend any good universities or institutions that teaches cybersecurity?
Well, I'm not updated with what other universities, the curriculum of other universities. Uh, lately, lately though, my colleagues, they have been studying UP Diliman, and there are my professor in UP Diliman are specifically computer security professors from Cambridge, for example. So I can't speak for other universities, but I can say that UP Diliman is a great curriculum for IT security. Usually it's not an undergraduate course though. Usually it's a graduate course. We used to teach graduate courses. In fact, your brother, Faye, is a professor in UP Diliman. I'm sure you know that, teaching computer security as well. So yeah, at least I can vouch for that.
Okay, so another question from Charles Tomeldan. Sir Paul, what's your take on ethical hacking?
It depends. For me, the only hacking that's acceptable is one done with permission. Um, so I'm not sure where ethical hacking falls in, but the way that's the definition we were taught all those years ago from our instructors in the SANS Institute. The only difference between a professional IT security guy doing hacking and an actual criminal is one thing, and that's permission. That's it. So you need permission. It's hard, and I guess that was drilled so much in our heads that's what sticks to us until this day. You need permission
Okay.
or you do some hacking, so to speak.
Understand. Permission is the key for that one. Thank you, Paul. So for our last question, I think this is a very common question for everyone. So it's from Denise Narciso. She's asking, is it safe to use the Remember Password feature of Google Chrome, wherein you can access or check all your passwords through it?
Okay. Personally, I don't use Google Chrome. I use LastPass, but I because of a vulnerability with LastPass when it comes to checking remember your password, I tend to not. Okay, I just rely LastPass to fill up the blanks of the websites that I go into. So no, I don't use that feature. I believe that it does have some safety, but the principle us in IT security always have is what we call the principle of least privilege. If you can work without it, don't use it as much as possible. Okay, so I know that could be a bit vague, but I'm trying to make it apply to everything in particular. Any that seems convenient to you, there's a hidden cost. There's a cost of security. So you must always tell yourself whether or not you really need that convenience or not. So yeah, and that changes from person to person.
Thank you. That's a good answer.
Yeah, that's right. Those are all insightful. Thank you, Paul, again. And thank you, Red Rock, for providing us today with your expertise in cybersecurity. This discussion has been very informative as we settle in the new normal. It is a great guide for all of us working remotely from home because the last thing we want is to compromise our work files, right? And our own personal data during this time when we are online for most of the day.
Before we say goodbye, though, let me remind everyone who is looking for better opportunities, sign up at workbank.com, where you can find job openings from different companies in the Philippines. You can find work from home jobs and frontliner jobs among thousands of other vacancies. Remember, Workbank is the only job site that lets you job hunt with benefits. Sign up today at workbank.com to experience it firsthand. You can also please follow us at Facebook and Instagram. Just search for the Workbank PH handle. Thank you, and we'll see you again for the next episode of Workbank ThinkTank. Enjoy your long weekend. Bye.